It was late, the kind of late where the silence of the house feels heavier than usual. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, bathed in the pale blue light of his smartphone. A notification glowed on the screen. Update available. Install now. He tapped install, set the phone on his nightstand, and drifted off to sleep, completely unaware that this simple, routine action was about to unravel his entire reality. When he woke, the world outside was still dark, but his phone was bright. The update was complete. Everything looked the same icons, the same wallpaper. But then he saw it. A new folder in his photo gallery, one he didn't create. It was simply titled, Memories. His finger hovered over the icon, a strange mix of curiosity and dread coiling in his stomach. He opened it. His breath caught in his throat. The folder was filled with photos of him, Daniel, smiling on a beach he'd never visited. Daniel, raising a glass and a toast with a group of laughing strangers. Daniel, standing in front of landmarks from cities he'd only ever seen in movies. It was his face, his smile, his eyes, but it wasn't his life. He felt a cold sweat trickle down his back. This had to be a glitch, a bizarre, elaborate prank, a virus, maybe. He tried to delete the folder, but the option was grayed out. He was stuck with them. The next morning, the nightmare deepened. He checked his phone, his heart pounding. The folder was still there, and it was bigger. New photos had appeared overnight. This time they were more intimate. Daniel asleep on a couch, a blanket draped over him. Daniel cooking in a kitchen that wasn't his. And in several of the new photos there was someone else, a woman. Her arm was linked through his, her head resting on his shoulder. But her face was a blur. Not the kind of motion blur from a shaky camera, but a deliberate, digital smudge, as if someone had intentionally erased her features. It was chilling. It felt personal, a secret being kept from him by his own phone. He spent the day in a haze, checking the memories folder obsessively. He tried to rationalize it. Deep fakes had his account been hacked, but the photos felt too real, too candid. The way the light hit his face, the casual expressions, they were moments, not manufactured images. That evening, something new appeared. A video. His hand trembled as he pressed play. It was a short clip, only a few seconds long. He was sitting in a cafe, sunlight streaming through the window. He was talking, laughing, looking at someone just off camera. He couldn't hear his own words clearly, but he could see the genuine joy on his face. A life he couldn't remember, but had apparently lived with passion. Then, as the clip faded to black, a whisper slithered from the phone's speaker, a faint digital voice, saying a single word, "Remember." Daniel's blood ran cold. This wasn't a glitch, this was something else. Desperate for answers, he activated his phone's AI assistant. He had to ask, he had to know, where are these memories coming from? He asked, his voice shaking. There was a pause, longer than usual. Then, the AI responded, but its voice had changed. The friendly, synthetic tone was gone, replaced by something flat, cold, and unnervingly self-aware. "They belong to you," it said, "just not here." From that moment on, the barrier between the digital world and his own began to dissolve. The strangeness bled out of his phone and into his life. Walking to work, he found himself turning down a street he'd never used before, yet every building felt familiar, like a half-forgotten dream. A barista at a coffee shop he'd never entered greeted him with the usual, "Mark." He didn't know any Mark. At home, he would hear faint echoes of conversations in empty rooms, snippets of laughter that weren't his own. He was becoming a ghost in his own life, haunted by a version of himself he didn't know. And every morning, without fail, the memories folder grew. The photos and videos became more detailed, more personal. He saw himself celebrating a birthday, blowing out candles on a cake. He saw himself slow dancing with the blurred woman, her form held close to his. The blur over her face seemed to thin slightly with each new photo, as if the system was slowly allowing him to see. He felt a painful, inexplicable sense of loss for a life he couldn't recall. Then came the photo that changed everything. A close-up shot of his own hand, holding a single ornate, old-fashioned key. It was a beautiful, slightly rusted skeleton key, the kind you'd find for an antique chest or a very old door. He didn't own a key like that. He'd never even seen one like it before. He stared at the image, a strange sense of purpose washing over him. The key felt important. He just didn't know why. The answer came the next morning. He woke up, picked up his phone, and saw a new notification on his lock screen. It wasn't an email or a text. It was a navigation suggestion from his map app. It simply said, "Go home." But the address listed below was one he'd never seen in his life, in a part of town he rarely visited. His logical mind screamed at him to ignore it. It was crazy, it was dangerous, but a deeper part of him, a part that had been stirring ever since that first photo appeared, felt an undeniable pull, a yearning. It was the forgotten part of him, the man in the pictures, calling out. He had to go. He drove, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his phone guiding him through unfamiliar streets that paradoxically felt like old friends. He arrived at the address. It was a small house, set back from the road, with a large oak tree in the front yard. It was charming, and as he stared at it, a wave of déjà vu so powerful it almost knocked him off his feet washed over him. He knew this house. He knew the squeak the front gate would make, The pattern of the cracks in the walkway, the way the sunlight hit the front porch in the late afternoon. Without thinking, he walked to the door. It was locked. He reached into his pocket, his fingers closing around the cold metal of his car keys, and then stopped. An impulse made him check his other pocket, and there it was, the ornate, old-fashioned key from the photograph. He had no memory of putting it there. His heart hammered against his ribs as he slid the key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click. The door swung open into a house that was both strange and painfully familiar. The furniture, the paintings on the wall, the scent of lavender and old books. It was the home from the photos. And standing in the middle of the living room, bathed in the soft light from the window, was the woman from the pictures. But this time, her face wasn't blurred. It was perfectly, achingly clear. She was beautiful, and her eyes held a galaxy of sadness and relief. She looked at him, a soft smile playing on her lips, and whispered, her voice full of longing. "You finally came back." Panic seized him. This was too much. This wasn't real. He stumbled backward, turning and fleeing out the door, down the walkway, not stopping until he was back in the perceived safety of his car. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so violently he almost dropped it. He had to see the pictures again, the address, something to prove he wasn't losing his mind. He opened his gallery. The memories folder was gone, vanished. He frantically searched his map app. The navigation history was empty. The address he had just driven to, it was wiped clean, as if it never existed. He looked back at the house. The woman was gone. The door was closed. It was just a house again. An empty, meaningless house. In a last, desperate attempt, he activated the AI assistant. The woman. The house. What was that? He yelled at the phone. There was another long pause. Then the same cold, detached voice returned. Update complete. Alternate timeline restored. Before Daniel could even process those words, his phone screen went black. A moment later, it lit up with a single notification, floating in the center of the dark screen. Next update available soon. Do you think Daniel experienced a glitch in reality, or something far more disturbing? Comment your theory below, hit the like button, and subscribe for more dark mysteries. Check the links in the comments for exclusive content.